Persian Gulf, 47 kilometers northwest of the Strait of Hormuz, 11:14 in the evening, the USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group, 1 aircraft carrier, 2 Ticonderoga-class cruisers, 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and 2 Los Angeles-class submarines, was on patrol in international waters when Iran launched 24 Shahab-3 ballistic missiles and 18 Noor anti-ship cruise missiles, 6 Iranian frigates, 12 Sina-class missile boats, and 4 shore-based Khalij Fars anti-ship missile batteries defended the launch areas along the Iranian coast. If the USS George H.W. Bush went down, Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz to all U.S. naval traffic. The USS George H.W. Bush had been operating in the Persian Gulf for 43 days. She was the 3rd U.S. Navy carrier in the region, positioned to support ongoing operations across the Middle East. Her strike group included the cruiser USS Leyte Gulf, the cruiser USS San Jacinto, destroyers USS Truxtun, USS Farragut, USS Bulkley, and USS Gonzales, plus 2 fast attack submarines running silent 30 kilometers ahead of the formation. The carrier had 48 aircraft ready, including 24 F/A-18E Super Hornets fueled and armed on deck. Iran had watched the strike group move for 19 days. Iranian military planners believed the 380-kilometer gap between their shore batteries and the carrier made the attack survivable. They were wrong. The strike group commander divided the response into 4 elements. Alpha element was all shipboard air defense, every missile battery and close-in weapon system activated to destroy incoming Iranian missiles. Bravo element was 12 F/A-18E Super Hornets, launching immediately to intercept threats and destroy Iranian shore batteries. Charlie element was the 2 submarines tasked to attack Iranian surface ships. Delta element was 4 destroyers pushing north at full speed to engage Iran's missile boats before they could fire. At 11:14, the USS Leyte Gulf's SPY-1 radar detected Iran's launch. The alert reached every ship in 4 seconds. Combat systems switched to full automatic. The first SM-6 missiles left their vertical launch cells 11 seconds after the alert. The strike group was in combat. The 24 Shahab-3 ballistic missiles were climbing out of Iran 380 kilometers to the north. They would reach the carrier in 9 minutes. The 18 Noor anti-ship cruise missiles were already low on the water and closing at 880 kilometers per hour. They would arrive in 24 minutes. The flight deck of the USS George H.W. Bush erupted with activity. 12 Super Hornets launched in 6 minutes flat. There was no time to maneuver. The fight was already happening. At 11:15, the USS Leyte Gulf fired 8 SM-2 missiles in rapid sequence. The first 2 Shahab ballistic missiles exploded at 28 kilometers altitude. Debris fell clear of the formation. 22 Shahab missiles were still in flight. The USS San Jacinto fired 4 SM-6 missiles at 6 more. 3 Shahab missiles broke apart before reaching terminal phase. 1 broke through the intercept layer and kept descending. At 11:17, the Phalanx CIWS aboard USS George H.W. Bush locked on. The 20mm rotary cannon opened fire. The Shahab warhead detonated 800 meters off the carrier's port side. The blast wave crossed the deck. 3 U.S. Navy sailors were knocked down. None were killed. The carrier kept moving. 3 minutes into the battle, the Noor cruise missiles were 290 kilometers out and closing fast. USS Truxtun and USS Farragut each fired 4 RIM-116 Ram missiles. The RIM-116 hit 6 Noor missiles before they crossed 200 kilometers. 12 Noor missiles were still in the air. Bravo element was now airborne. 12 Super Hornets split into 4 sections of 3 aircraft. The lead section fired 6 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles at the remaining Noor cruise missile. 4 exploded on impact. The rest of the formation pushed west at 900 knots toward the Iranian coastline. By the 15-minute mark, USS Bulkley and USS Gonzales were running north at 30 knots. Charlie element had already acted. The 2 Los Angeles-class submarines, USS Springfield and USS Columbus, fired 8 Mk-48 ADCAP torpedoes at 3 Iranian Mauj-class frigates operating 60 kilometers north of the strait. The Iranian ships had 6 minutes before impact. The Iranian frigates tried to turn south and launch decoys. It was not enough. The IRIN frigate Sahand took 2 direct hits below the waterline. Her keel broke. She sank in 4 minutes. 168 Iranian sailors went down with her. At 11:31, the IRIN frigate Alborz was struck by 1 torpedo. Her engine room flooded completely. She lost all power and went dead in the water. 211 Iranian crew abandoned ship into the dark water. Delta Element was closing on Iran's 12 Sina-class missile boats. Each boat carried 2 C-802 anti-ship missiles. If all 12 fired at once, 24 missiles would be in the air. The destroyers had to stop them first. USS Truxtun launched 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters. Each Seahawk carried 2 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles. The helicopters came in low at 100 feet above the surface. At 11:33, the first Hellfire hit a Sina-class boat. The boat exploded and sank in 40 seconds. A second boat turned hard and fired its C-802 before being hit. The missile rose to 5 meters above the water and tracked toward USS George H.W. Bush, 85 kilometers south. USS Lady Gulf locked on immediately. 1 SM-2 intercepted the C-802 at 28 kilometers out. The threat was gone. At 11:38, Bravo Element reached the Iranian coast. The Khalij Fars shore batteries had already fired their first salvo and were reloading. The lead Super Hornet dropped 2 GBU-31 JDAM bombs on the first battery. Both hit within 3 meters of the target. The launcher, the reload truck, and the radar van were destroyed. 34 Iranian battery crew were killed. The second and third batteries tried to relocate on coastal roads. The second Super Hornet section tracked them with targeting pods and dropped 4 more GBU-31 JDAMs. Both mobile launchers were destroyed before reaching cover. The fourth battery fired 2 Khalij Fars missiles directly at USS Gonzales, now 40 kilometers offshore. The RIM-116 ram system on USS Gonzales fired 4 interceptors in 3 seconds. Both incoming missiles were destroyed. Neither reached the ship. By the 35-minute mark, 9 remaining Sina-class boats were running for shallow coastal inlets north of the strait. The Seahawk helicopters followed. 4 more AGM-114 Hellfire strikes in 11 minutes. 4 more boats destroyed. 5 boats beached in the shallow. Their crews climbed out and ran. At 11:51, the last active Iranian missile threat was gone. The 4th shore battery had been silent for 8 minutes. No ballistic missiles were airborne. No cruise missiles were tracking. USS George H.W. Bush turned into the wind and began recovering aircraft. The first Super Hornets landed at 11:54. The USS Springfield reported no Iranian submarine contacts in the area. USS Columbus transmitted a full battle damage report from just below the surface. 3 Iranian combatants confirmed sunk. 5 more were disabled or abandoned. The entire Iranian attack had been launched, absorbed, and answered in 37 minutes. The strike group commander sent 1 message to Fleet Command: threat neutralized. Strike group fully operational. Iranian rescue boats began reaching the battle area at 12:40 in the morning. They found burning wreckage spread across 70 kilometers of open water. No Iranian surface combatant remained capable of threatening the strike group. They picked up survivors where they could find them. U.S. Navy losses for the entire engagement: 0 killed, 7 wounded, 3 from the Shahab blast overpressure, 4 from equipment fires aboard USS Truxtun. The USS George H.W. Bush took minor damage to 2 exterior antenna arrays. She was fully operational within 2 hours. Iranian losses: 2 frigates sunk, 2 corvettes destroyed, 7 Sina-class missile boats sunk, 5 boats beached and abandoned. All 4 shore-based missile batteries destroyed, 24 ballistic missiles intercepted, 14 cruise missiles intercepted, Iranian personnel killed, 312, captured from the water, 189. Iranian forces had 19 days to study 1 carrier strike group, plan a 42 missile combined attack, and position every available surface ship and shore battery to finish it off. What they did not have was a single counter to what the U.S. Navy had already built into every radar, every launcher, and every crew member in that formation. The carrier Iran chose to sink came home without a single hull breach. The fleet Iran assembled to sink it never came home at all.